Welcome to If the Walls Could Talk in Buffalo podcast with Don Purdy, former member of the Buffalo Bills front office, 27 years, and Josh Cormier, a member of the coaching staff under the Wade Phillips regime. And we are here, as always, to talk with you about the Buffalo Bills of 1990 and, of course, 2022.
And 3, 2, 1.
Okay, we are joined by Bills Wall of Famer Phil Hansen, an old friend of mine actually too, and of Josh's from our time there. And Phil played 11 years in the NFL, all with the Bills, third all time in sacks, and a fan favorite. And Phil, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yep, third in sacks. Old Aaron Schnobel passed me by to get ahead of me. Bruce Smith, nobody was breaking that record, that's for sure.
Sure. So I'm going to put you on the spot real quick here, Phil, before as we start. Can you tell me who you had your one interception against, and tell me about that play?
Interception. I had more than one. Regular season, I had a playoff one against Dan Marino. I had Vinny Testaverde. It's my last year. Oh, you know what? I had a touchdown. I didn't intercept it. I picked up a fumble and ran it back for a touchdown. That's what that was. But yeah, regular season, probably one. Was it Vinny Testaverde? It was a Jet, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. Okay, yeah,
no, against the Jets.
That's good. And your touchdown was a scoop and score.
Yep.
I remember.
Yep, against Oakland.
Yeah, with the Marino. Yeah, that's definitely one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So as we've interviewed a bunch of guys, over the past few months, we kind of like to start on draft day, because it seems like guys have real vivid memories of their draft day. Some fun stories we've heard about finding out in a Wendy's drive-through, at a bowling alley, at a dorm room. Can you kind of take us back, maybe even a little bit before the draft, as to your football journey, growing up and getting recognized by the NFL, and then your memories of draft day itself?
And we like to remind fans too before that there were no cell phones back then, which is very relevant to how that day played out, I'm sure.
Yes, no cell phones, and we had something that's going to become evident here. We had something on our phones called call waiting, which I will explain to the younger generation what that is, because that plays a big part in this. But yeah, we were very successful at a Division II college, North Dakota State. I grew up on a farm in North Dakota, and then played at Division II North Dakota State. We won the championship my senior year, and people started taking notice, and I played in a couple of all-star games. There used to be a blue-gray all-star game. I played in that, and I played in another one as well. Maybe the East-West Shrine game, I think it was. And then the Combine was in February back then. So lots of teams came in and were testing me out and, having me lift weights, doing different tests and stuff. So that was a good sign, I guess, back then. Remember, it was 12 rounds back then in the early 90s. Draft day came, and back then, as I recollect, ESPN only carried the first round. I mean, today it's become a production. They make money out of it. They just wanted to get it over with back then, just get through it and get on to other things. So ESPN carried the draft Saturday or Sunday afternoon for about 4 or 5 hours, I think. And then they were going to do the first and second round the first day, I think. So once ESPN went off the air, I just kind of sat around and started looking, and at my roommates in my apartment, and I'm like, well, what do we do now? And then every time the phone would ring, I would, a friend would call and say, hey, Phil, anything happened yet? I said, shut up, get off the phone, don't call again. Click.
Yeah, that's right.
But this is where the call waiting thing comes in. I didn't have call waiting because we were college kids and didn't have any money, so we didn't want to pay the extra $1 a month for call waiting, so we didn't have it. For those of you youngsters who don't know what call waiting was, back before cell phones, if you were on a call with a landline phone and another call came in, you would know it was coming in because there would be a little tone, so you could put that person on hold and talk to somebody more important.
Like a click or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So that was what led me up to kind of draft day. And then, it was about 6:30 that night. I got the call from Buffalo. So yeah, that was a whirlwind of
Was it Marv calling you?
You know what? They passed the phone around, and I remember Walt Corey was the D coordinator. Marv was certainly on there. I think Bill Polian was on there. It was happening so fast. I talked to Chuck Dickerson, was a defensive line coach. I remember talking to him. It happened really fast, and really they were trying to be cordial, but they said, "Hey, we'll have our minicamp weekend next weekend, and we'll get you all set up and stuff." They were trying to get onto the third round and start making. As I look back on it, it was a real quick conversation with several people. They wanted to get onto their third round pick, deciding on who they were going to get there. So. Yeah, it happened so fast. I wish I would have recorded it, because you're right. It was a big deal. And then trying to recollect 5 minutes after it happened, I couldn't remember half the names, but I knew I thought I was going to New York City. New York. So
Daryl Talley said the same thing.
That's a common theme that it was a shock when people found out, Buffalo's 7 hours from the city. What was your if you were going to be drafted today, do you think you'd have one of those living room setups with your whole family and the extended crew? Like, would you do anything differently from draft day, or you like the story you have?
I mean, it wasn't as big of a deal as it was now, but I'm kind of a more personal guy, I guess. I'd have my immediate family maybe, but I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't let any TV cameras in.
I don't blame you. I don't blame
personal.
you.
Was the second round where you thought you were going to go, or you said you watched the first round, but like who, your agent, or you get any indication, or people saying is about where you might go?
Yeah, you listen to prognosticators and stuff back then, and they were pretty good back then too. But anywhere from the second to the sixth round is what I was told. The second was the highest I think I could have went, and 54th was the end of the second round. So I mean, it was happy days.
Yeah. When you got here, we've talked to like Don Beebe, Jamie Mueller, guys who went to smaller schools. Did it take you a while? Like the first minicamp, you step on the field and you're here with Bruce Smith and Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and Andre Reed. Did you feel overwhelmed, out of place, or did you know, like, athletically and mentally that you were, you belonged?
No, I didn't know I belonged. That first minicamp weekend, I mean, I'm on a plane ride out to Buffalo. I'd never been out pretty much outside of the Midwest, flying to the Buffalo airport. The only thing I have anything in common with is the other rookies who don't know what the heck's going on either. We're at the stadium. The locker room was all in the stadium. There's no practice facility back then. We're going out to practice. We're in the locker rooms with who we just saw in the Tampa Super Bowl. Bruce Smith, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, Jim Kelly. I mean, and we're one of them. Well, you certainly didn't feel like one of them. But there was one incident. This happened right away. It might have even been minicamp weekend. Our meeting rooms were on the fourth floor of the stadium. The locker room was on the first floor. The second floor was, I think, that was the lobby. And then the third floor was kind of the administration building. Well, I'd stayed after my meeting to talk with my coach just about some things that were going on I didn't quite understand. All the other guys from the defensive line meeting room on the fourth floor had went down to the locker room to get ready for practice. So I got my questions answered. I quick ran to the elevator, got in the elevator to go down to the first floor, and got in. I'm all by myself, and start going down. I'm like, oh gosh, I hope this elevator doesn't stop. And sure enough, it stopped on the third floor, and in walks Thurman Thomas, and he walks in. So it's just me and him on an elevator now. He walks in and turns around and faces the door, and we go down 2 more flights of elevator, which seemed like an eternity. I don't think I took a breath in those two flights. And we get down, and doors open. He takes a step out and turns around kind of slowly and looks at me and says, "You're from North Dakota?" and he walks away, and I'm like, yes, he must have read my bio. At least he might not know my name, but at least he knows where I'm from.
That's funny.
That's amazing.
I remember your first year, we took a preseason trip to London, right? That was your first year.
That's
I remember.
Correct. Yeah.
I remember, Phil. I didn't know you really much up until that point, but what struck me from that trip, it was my first time being around you much, was you were just very personable and engaging to a lot of the staff. Like, you would just talk to staff and, hey, you know, what do you do? And including myself. But I just thought, you know, there was maybe just kind of that Midwestern politeness or something. But on the field, you were a beast. You know, so.
It's funny, Don, you should say that. I mean, I've been away from Buffalo now for 20 years now, and certainly we've all the players I played with have moved on now. But you know, some of my best friends were my neighbor, dairy farmer from over at Batavia, my chiropractor, my therapist. You know, people that were outside of the team. You know, Randy Ribbick's probably one of my better friends in Buffalo.
All right.
Touch base with him once a month, I suppose, and. You know, Scott Birchhold, just some guys who worked with the Bills that I've had numbers and kept in contact with or had reason to contact. So I don't know why that happened. And that's not that I'm not friends with the players. I still am friends with them too, but I don't know. It's just a different kind of friendship, I guess.
Do you, I'm kind of curious as to, did you pick your jersey number? Were you given 90? Did 90 have any significance to you?
Well, I had 90 in college. So, I mean, I would have played with number 2 if they would have given it to me out in Buffalo. I mean, but he was in my locker when I got there. So evidently it wasn't taken by any other player. So I got it. But interestingly enough, so speaking of Randy Woody Ribbick, he was the equipment manager. So he put a face mask on my helmet that I didn't want, but it took me a year to figure out that I could ask for any face mask I wanted. So a lot of my football cards from my first year were of this dumb face mask that I didn't want, that, you know, Woody put on there. I don't know if he did it by accident or intentionally, but we finally got that fixed in my second year. But all my reminders of my football cards are of that ugly face mask that Woody put on.
Rookie hazing.
We had Woody on about a month ago, and he's still the same.
You know, it was a good episode.
Absolutely.
People really liked hearing. He was very forthcoming, if you could believe that, Phil. He didn't hold back.
Yeah, blunt and to the point. So your first season, you're a rookie. You come in. You know, you're on a Super Bowl contender. How long did it take you to feel comfortable? You know, when did you feel like you had arrived, or were able to make meaningful contributions without being a rookie anymore?
You know, looking back on it now, I started my first year. First couple games were kind of jostling a little bit, but then I was the starter in there because Bruce Smith was injured. So they started me at right defensive end, and wow, just learning under fire. I think I was really drafted because they saw potential, but I don't think they expected me to be starting the first year. But like with Bruce being out, I think he had a little knee problem. They threw me in there, and it was baptism under fire. And when I look back on those days, I mean, I was getting crushed on some plays, and I'll never forget the Talley. Daryl Talley always defended me and kind of took me under his wing. And I mean, everybody looks at the film, you can see what's happening. And I never felt like I didn't belong. I mean, those guys made me feel like, I belonged and I was part of that defense, but I was the weak link in that defense is what I was. But I just remember Daryl Talley always, give me, tips or something on the field, and just stick with it. You're doing great. And just always a little inspiration for me. And I never forgot that about them. And I told him that, in the last 10 years, I've told him that I really appreciated that. But yeah, so how long did it take me? Probably that first year was just, you're trying to find yourself, trying to find your right body weight. Rusty Jones was trying to get you in as fit as you could be, and going up in weight, down in weight, still trying to play, nursing injuries all the way through. So it was tough, but we actually, luckily, because of our offense, went back to a Super Bowl that year.
Speaking of which, great segue. You mentioned something earlier that I had forgotten about, that Chuck Dickerson was on the call when you got drafted. So your first year, you go to the Super Bowl, and this is not, I mean, this is public knowledge. Everyone remembers his antics or whatever you want to call him. It's on the Four Falls of Buffalo. You know, he kind of was, nope.
Oh, we lost you for a sec.
Okay. He was chirping or did something kind of making fun of the Hogs.
Right.
And so you play that game, and they did have like one of the best offensive lines in NFL history. But did you ever hear anything during that game from them? Like, oh, okay, did they reference that at all as motivation?
Yeah. So the Super Bowl was in Minneapolis that year. My first year, the Bills' second year of Super Bowls. So, I mean, that was really close to my backyard. So, yeah, I remember that one well. We played the Washington Redskins. And Chuck Dickerson, you know, he was really trying to complement the Washington Redskins offensive line. They're just big hogs that can just drive you out. But it turned into something else, and they used it as motivation. I said I started pretty much most of my first year. However, Bruce Smith came back for some playoff games in the Super Bowl, so I was not a starter on that team. I did get some reps in the game, but you know, I think most of that transpired in the media and with fans and stuff. I don't remember or recall a lot of that in the game, them using that in the game, like, how about this hog running you over? So I don't remember anything like that.
Is there more or less trash talking on the lines than there are like DB receiver? Because we've had a bunch of receivers, and you know, Chris Hale was on, Don Beebe was on, talking. You know, you line up one-on-one with a guy outside, and there's, you know, some guys are talkers, some guys are not.
You asked Bill Brooks if he was a trash talker.
Shockingly, no.
We already knew the answer to that.
But like where you played, is there a lot of talking during the games, a lot of chirping, or is it kind of just grunting and groaning?
Well, I guess I wasn't a good trash talker, so I didn't do it at all. And if I was good at it, maybe I would have tried it, but I got shut down pretty fast anytime I tried to interject. But most of my talking on the line was just about heavy breathing, trying to get my breath back before the next play. And I would say most linemen were like that. Occasionally, there was either a player or a game where you thought you were cheap shotted or something, and there was some finger pointing. We're coming after you. I remember Shane Conlon in a huddle. He said once, you guys got this play. I'm going after the guard.
Wow. That's good
Watching
stuff.
it on film, Shane Conlon's, he had chicken legs, but boy, he could drop a load on somebody, and he brought that guard to his knees. And just things like that kind of happen. I also remember Shane Conlon. You know, I'm a rookie in a huddle. He's making the call, and the call's coming in from the sideline. The offensive line for whoever we're playing is coming up to the line, and I'm patiently waiting. And I'm like, okay, what's the call? What's the call? What's the call? What are we doing? What are we doing? He's like, what? He's looking at the sideline. I need the signal again. He's motioning. Come on, give me the call. And he looks back, sees the offensive line coming up. He says, forget it, just play.
Just do it.
And here I'm a rookie, and my eyes get really big. I'm like, well, what's the call? I got to have a call again.
Is that okay? Is that okay at all? It worked out. It reminds me, too, I remember you told me a story. I hope you remember it. I hope you remember some version of it. But it was in that Pittsburgh playoff game where Bruce Smith couldn't play. He had the flu, and you kind of had to restructure the line that day, had guys that were seeing time that wouldn't have otherwise. And you went up against a good Steeler team that had that Bam Morris was a running back, and he was a challenge. He was bringing a load, and there was one play, and I can't remember whoever. Josh, we talked about this before he came on. He thought it might have been Oliver Barnett. I thought it might have been Carl Wilson, but whatever happened, instead of getting 7 or 8 yards on one carry, this D lineman met Bam Morris at the line of scrimmage and got driven back 3 yards. So it was like only a 3-yard gain. And like he had some trash talking after that. Do you remember? And you said something like his helmet was twisted, so he was saying it through his ear hole or something.
It wasn't Oliver Barnett. It was
okay.
Carl Wilson. That sounds right. But so Bruce didn't take his flu shot, and he couldn't play.
Yeah.
So they really exploited that would be the right defensive end. I was a left defensive end. I don't know, Jeff Wright or maybe Ted Washington was there by then. But they were trying to exploit that, and they were getting yards. I remember Bryce Pop was on the team too, and we were really trying to squeeze that right end area because that's where they were getting all the yards. So yeah, there was one play. They were getting 7 or 8 yards of crack, and there was one play where they only got 3. And Carl's got his helmet on sideways, looking, his nose is sticking out his ear hole, and he's like, "You can't bring that over here." And we're just like, "Carl, shut up. Get the call, get in your stance, and do your best, but shut up."
Yeah, didn't help at all.
That's great.
I'm glad you remembered that. I remember you telling me. I just thought it was hilarious.
That's a great story. We maybe you could share a funny story. We had Mike Lotus on, and that was a very interesting and colorful interview. And he kind of personifies to me what like a D lineman is. So do you have a good like Mike Lotus memory or story? Because he was a trip when he was on.
Lotus, the dish, Mount Pinatuba, because he explodes. Yeah. Oh man.
Where to start, right?
I remember I got there after he headbutted somebody. He had to have stitches, I think, in his forehead. That happened the year before because they were going to the first Super Bowl. But that was always, a lot of guys talked about that. But my story with Mike,
it's okay.
you know, I don't have one right offhand. I remember in the locker room, a lot of guys would tease Mike and it just to get a rise out of him, and it usually worked. But I remember one day it was a great comeback. He said, "Hey, are we fighting or are we playing?"
Nice, beautiful.
We fighting or we playing? Because I don't know, and because everybody said, "Oh, Mike, relax. I was just joking with you." Well, he didn't know. Are we fighting or are we playing?
Well, it's funny when you remember your draft day, he shared with us his draft day. He went in the 10th round, and he expected to go earlier. So when the phone rang, he said it was either John Butler or Marv. I think it was Marv. And hey, how do you feel about being a Buffalo Bill? He just said, I used some very colorful language and basically said,
"It's about effing time."
Yeah, somebody called me.
Yeah,
those were his first words back to Marv.
Yeah, that's great. So you obviously played with a bunch of great players. One Hall of Famer. Other than Bruce Smith, who was maybe the most talented guy you played with on the line? I'm picturing maybe Ted Washington, Pat Williams. I feel like is criminally underrated in Bill's history. Like, obviously everybody knows about Bruce, but maybe you could share, some memories or observations of some of the other linemen that you played with, or even offensive linemen that you lined up against every day in practice.
And you mentioned a name earlier that I'm curious about too when you talk about free agency. But Bryce Pop came in, and man, what an impact he made! Did that impact surprise you? Like how much he really helped the pass rush?
Yeah, Bryce came in, and I think he was player of the year in '97. So I mean, he was our defensive player of the year in '97. So he really added to our defense when he came in. Cornelius Bennett, early in my career, I mean, that guy, you'd watch film and you're running as fast as you can to get to the ball carrier, and he runs past you like you're not even moving. I'm like, this is as fast as I can go, and he makes you look like you're jogging. But he was really good, and he had to pass rush when Bruce Smith was hurt a little bit and did a really good job. Ted Washington was, I mean, you have to have at the nose guard, the center nose guard position. That's kind of a fulcrum point. If your nose guard gets pushed back, your ends are going to get pushed back. They're going to be in your linebacker's way. They're not going to be able to make plays. So Ted Washington was a man in the middle. I love playing next to him.
Imagine.
He was top rate. He was smart. He was strong. He knew what was going on. It was always lively conversations in the locker room.
He had the biggest hands. So he would come over to the field house when I was in the merchandise department. And his wife, they had a bunch of charity stuff, and he would always get his jerseys. She was the biggest purchaser of Ted Washington jerseys, and he had the biggest hands. And I remember he would come up into our office, and he would take his hand and he'd put it like behind my neck, and he could almost like go around my neck with his one hand, like his thumb to like his index finger. And I'm just thinking, this guy could like crush me in one little with one hand. It just spoke to me as how big of a human being he was, and he could move. He was unbelievable agile for how big he was.
Yeah, he's not going to win any 40-yard contest, but side to side, tackle to tackle, there wasn't anybody who moved faster than him. He's been cooking. I don't know if you've had him on your show yet, but he's kind of turned into a cooking guy. It's really interesting, and he puts them on, or he used to put them on Facebook. I'm not on that anymore, but he would be a great cook, and he's got great commentary to go with it. You should have him on.
He's a funny guy, and his wife Lisa was a really nice lady too. Ted would come in and always had a joke, or he kind of reminds me of Shaq. He's like this kind of big teddy bear in a body where you don't expect like a funny guy, or he's like a gentle giant almost. Like every time I see Shaq, I always think of Ted Washington.
I wasn't traveling with the team then, so I mean, you guys all had seats in between you. But I remember it was the off season, and I went somewhere. I was flying back to Buffalo, and he was on my flight. And hey, how you doing? How you doing? And he went in the back, and I'm thinking, there's just no way he fits in just one seat. Like, could he buy 2 seats? I don't know. I was always curious to see how he did it, but and he took up a lot of space, but heck of a football player too. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite game? Do you have a favorite place that you played other than Buffalo? Maybe on the road?
Well, I had a favorite game until this year when the Minnesota.
I know.
I thought that one would stand forever. So very disappointed. I live in the state of Minnesota now, so I don't like the Vikings even more. I'm always a Bills fan, but it ticks me off.
Me too, especially it was Frank Reich that so not only do the Colts do him dirty, they allow another team to break his record. I mean, Philly still have, it's an asterisk, but it's still huge. You have the greatest comeback in playoff history, but that still says a lot. But you're right. I was bummed.
What stands out to you from that game specifically?
I remember a couple things. I remember the first half was disastrous. We go in at halftime, and Marv, in true Marv form, is still trying to, rally the troops. And he said something. So the defense gets together, the offense gets together, and then at the end, we all get together, and Marv gives just a little 1-minute talk. And he said, I'll never forget this. He said, let's go out there. We're going to have a Garrison finish. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, what the heck is a Garrison finish? Well, I had to look it up after the game. Because it stuck with me, and it's a come from behind win, and we
just assumed we all knew what that was.
Yeah. So, and the other thing I remember just about being on the field, I remember I won't tell you the player that said this to me, but he said, "You know what? Just don't get hurt out there. Let's get ready for next season." And that made me so mad. I said, "If we're going to lose this game, if this is going to be my last game, you're going to be embarrassed." Yeah, I didn't like that from my own teammate. But the other thing is, so Frank Reich comes out. We're down by 25. Frank Reich comes out, throws a pass for a touchdown. Unfortunately, it's to the Oilers, and they go back. And we're down 32. What I remember is the mass exodus from the stadium. I mean, there's 80,000 fans at that stadium. There, it could seat 80,000, and it was full. And there couldn't have been in 5 minutes. There couldn't have been 30,000 people in that stadium. I remember that clearly, just looking up, and the aisles are full and people are just vacating. And then slowly, Adam Lingner was on the sideline. He says, "Hey, we only need 4 touchdowns and a field goal."
Doing the math. Yeah.
And then you're doing sideline math. And then, okay. And then we get a touchdown. We're like, hey, okay. We still got a quarter left. We're into the fourth quarter now, and hey, we can still do. Got to stop them, and so some things just started happening. And then I remember the fans starting to try to come back in. Well, there's only one entrance policy. You couldn't come back in. I think they even broke down the gates to get back into the game.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
the end of it. And so that was early in my career. So every time I went out and did a speaking engagement around Buffalo, around the region, and that game came up, which it did quite regularly, I would always say, "Hey, were you one of those guys that left? Were you one of the guys that left that game?" And there was, to this day, I haven't heard, or not one person has admitted to leaving that game. But
exactly.
There's 150,000 people at that game, right? That's the old joke.
Yeah. My wife, now I was working, and I actually had a cell phone for work, but I was in the stadium doing things. But my wife, Amy, was sitting with my cousin, Johnny, using our 2 complimentary seats. So the game's over, and everyone was just hugging anyone, like,
Sure.
just, oh my gosh. And I was like, oh, I hope she stayed. I hope she stayed. So I called home. I said, please tell me you stayed for the whole game. She goes, I did. I thought about leaving, but Johnny said we should stay, and he was right. And
That's
like, oh,
that's
so
great.
I wanted her to experience that.
You know, that kind of leads me to a question, Phil. So when you guys win that game, there's always a talk of, like, you know, the team of destiny, or a game like that can carry you through the playoffs. And obviously we all know what happened this year, and everybody around here and maybe around the country felt like the Bills were like a team of destiny, or, you know, things were lining up their way. Did you feel any differently after that game? Did that game's momentum carry over the next week on the road at Pittsburgh and then into Miami? Like, did it matter that you won that way, you know, going forward, or not?
Maybe some subliminally or something, but I mean, you're as on to the next task. I mean, you got 24 hours to celebrate, then you got to move on, and it was playoffs, so we wanted to move on. And did it carry over? I don't know.
Hard to quantify.
Yeah, that's always the narrative, right? Like, everybody always thinks, oh, you know, they're a team of momentum or destiny, or it's their year or whatever. And it's like, well, no, you got to go line up and play the next week as if that never happened.
Yeah,
I was a more practical guy. I mean, okay, let's celebrate, and then let's get on to the next thing. And okay, this is what we got to do to beat the next team. Whether that carried momentum, I couldn't feel it or think it did. It was exciting, but you still got a new task at hand. And Pittsburgh Steelers, they're not going to care that you won. Okay, we're playing them instead of Houston. I mean, that's all they thought.
Yeah, we've talked to a few guys that were in that game, and they wanted to remind us, like, yeah, that is the most memorable game of my career. But don't forget, what we did those next 2 weeks, going into Pittsburgh and Miami, and winning those games impressively. One still with Frank, and then the next one, Jim coming back. But those were impressive games too. So Phil, there's so much more we could talk about with your career, but I want to make sure we talk about what you've done post career. You've been a radio announcer for your alumni. You said you've been on. You're on some boards. I'm not surprised that you try to stay busy professionally, and obviously you communicate very well. So I'm sure that has to be enjoyable for you.
Yeah, I'm on a NDSU trustees, the college that I played at. I do radio for for NDSU, the place that I played. So they've won 9 of the last 11 FCS championships. So it's been pretty exciting time for that. I officiate high school football and basketball. Right now it's basketball season, so I'm out pretty much every night of the week officiating boys and girls high school basketball. It keeps me in shape, and I like doing that. And I sit on a couple other boards that are locally important. You don't make your living at it, but I think they're very valuable, and that's kind of where I spend my time.
North Dakota State, they're the Bison, right? They play in that dome. What's the name of that dome? The Fargo Dome. That looks like that's a very unique stadium, right? The home field advantage there must be something during a big game.
Yeah, when you get 20,000 people in there, it gets loud. All the sound reverberating. So yeah, it's pretty loud. It's good college atmosphere.
That logo too is like the Bills logo, isn't it? Isn't it charging buffalo?
Yep, charging bison. So yeah, in my career, I played for college bison and pro Buffalo Bills.
Oh, how funny!
Yeah,
that's interesting. So before we let you go here, we do something with the guys, kind of fun. It's called the 2-minute warning. So we're going to try to ask you 10 questions quick in 2 minutes, kind of like offbeat questions.
Yeah, you
Don,
see us looking up. It's because the big board's up there that we can see.
So Don, you can fire away.
I'm going to throw him a curveball. And what is the most interesting NBA game that you ever attended? I hope the answer is what I think it is.
I've never attended an NBA game.
Yes, you did. You did in Toronto. We went.
Yeah.
We saw the Bulls. The Bulls play in Toronto.
The Michael Jordan Bulls.
Yeah, it was Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman all on that team.
And that's probably why I wanted to go, because I wanted to see Michael Jordan, who was at the top of his career at that time. So many shots to the head. I didn't.
That's funny.
That's okay. You came around.
Give me 3 people, dead or alive, that you'd want to have dinner with.
Oh, probably Jesus, number 1. Oh man. I'd really like to reconnect with Marv. I just admired him so much. And outside of football, doesn't it have to be football? Or?
Nope.
probably going back to Teddy Roosevelt. I mean,
There you go.
he established a lot of parks and stuff out here. I was wondering what was going through his mind at the time. I thought that'd be
That's good.
interesting.
Those are 3 good ones.
Yeah, very good. So you're entering an arena. You're a big deal. You have what's your dry ice entrance song?
Oh man, Don. Oh man. You know what? Whatever. I don't even have I don't even have a.
No worries. And that's not you, but still, I wanted to.
That's okay. What's the best concert you've ever attended?
Oh, we got something called We Fest right out here, right near our home in Minnesota. Toby Keith was really good a few years ago. Yeah, I thought he was good when he was in his prime, about 5 years.
So I Love This Bar maybe would be a dry ice song if you want.
Sure, there you go.
There you go. So thinking back to your Buffalo days, what restaurant was your favorite, and what dish did you enjoy most there?
Oh, Ilio's was fantastic, and I hate singling somebody out because there's so many good restaurants in Buffalo. Listen, I thought Domino's Pizza out in the Midwest was the only pizza imaginable. I thought that was the best pizza around. I mean, you don't even have Domino's Pizza in Buffalo because you got too many pizza and wing joints that are absolutely fantastic. And I do miss the pizza. Some places can replicate it out here, but the wings, nobody can replicate. Anybody who says they have Buffalo wings is mistaken. Buffalo, you just can't get wings like Buffalo makes.
Favorite
Leo's, and then I don't know. I had a clam linguine once that was really good.
That's awesome. What was your favorite cartoon growing up?
Oh, Bugs Bunny. I liked all of them.
Excellent. It's a popular food, but you hate it.
It's a popular food, but I hate it?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
This is tough. I didn't warn you about these tough questions. So I knew you can handle them.
I don't know if it's popular, but I don't like it. Liver.
Well, there you go. What was the most annoying fan base in the NFL?
Miami.
There you go. There you go.
With their Who Let the Dogs Out. God, they play that for about 6 years. Who Let the Dogs Out in there? I'm like, jeez, something new.
That's right. So, Josh, what is the money on this next one? Being from North Dakota.
Oh, yeah, he's a minus 5,000.
Yeah. Okay. Here we go. Can you drive a stick shift?
Absolutely.
There you go.
Okay.
And then now this one he might be an underdog on. Our last question: are you willing to sing us 5 seconds of the North Dakota State fight song?
Sure.
All right.
I might do the whole thing.
Do it.
Stop me when you have to. Yeah. Far across the plains of Fargo, there for all to see, stands an old abandoned outhouse called the University. Hail the bison, with their tails up in the air. University, University, you can kiss what's under there.
That's amazing.
That's the best one yet.
That's just what we sang in the locker room after the game.
That's the best one yet. That is great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Phil. We really appreciate it.
Phil, it's been great talking with you. I knew this was going to be fun, and it is. I can't wait for fans and people around here that we're big fans of you, of course, to hear it and to know that you're still doing well, and stay in touch.
Yep, it's been great. Get those Bills back on track next year. It was great watching and just talking about them and spreading the good word about Buffalo around here.
All right.
Excellent.
Take care, Phil. Thanks,
Phil.
Yep, see ya.
All right.
Fellas, listen up. All you ever did for an opportunity. You gotta get it. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? I want to bid you now farewell, but not goodbye.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Today is a bittersweet day for me. Memories, many of which Mr. Wilson has alluded to, flood my mind right now. I'm surrounded by my thoughts and indeed by the presence of friends unparalleled. Visions from a lifetime of thrills keep flashing before me, and yet the future beckons, and I look forward to it with excitement and anticipation. Because I'll tell you something, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. So I advanced it on that. And we finally came to an agreement and decided to move forward. And so now My time with the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, has come to its natural conclusion. How do I begin to thank all those who have been instrumental in enriching my life here? Well, I can't do it adequately, and I know it. I can't adequately. But I remember you all fondly and forever. North Fox, so it's an early day. Be sure you get your taping and breakfast in. The meeting tomorrow for all players will be an 8 a.m. meeting. Enjoy your day today, fellas.
It's great because it was a special group of people at a special time in the city. The team that we had really unified the region. And there are still people who think fondly of those things and remember some significant things that happened during that time that were pretty cool.
You see, our fans are great. You know, they come out, they get excited, they come out and they cheer before the game. They're ready to go. And when you see that, when you walk out of that tunnel, you know, right now, here comes the electricity.